Hello. Recently, we celebrated 100 years of sociology in India. In this pretext, Indian Sociological Society took the initiative to create a visual archive specifically for young scholars so that they can have a sense of work done by sociologists in India. One of the way to do this is by locating the scholar or sociologist intellectually, biographically, and institutionally. In this context, today we have Professor Vinod Jairath, with whom we will be interacting, and this interaction will be carried on by myself and Professor Pushpesh Kumar from University of Hyderabad. So before we start, let me just give a brief background of Professor Vinod Jairath. Professor Vinod Jairath, by training, is an aeronautical engineer from IIT Kanpur. After completing his BTech from IIT Kanpur, he joined Delhi School of Economics and completed his Masters in Sociology with a gold medal. And after that, he went to University of Sussex to pursue his D.Litt under Professor Scarlett Epstein. After doing his PhD, he joined IIT Kanpur as a faculty, and then he joined University of Delhi as a faculty, and lately he joined University of Hyderabad as faculty, from where he retired as head of department. Throughout his extensive career at IIT Kanpur, Delhi School of Economics, and University of Hyderabad, he has made significant contributions in teaching, research, and institutional leadership. His research interests are vast, encompassing sociology of science and technology, sociology of development, and sociology of study on Muslim communities in South Asia. These fields in which he has authored and edited influential publication. Beyond academia, he has leveraged his expertise in directing and scripting over 36 development documentary films on watershed management, women's empowerment, and agricultural reform, demonstrating a profound commitment to applying sociological insight in real-world situations. So, with this brief introduction, let us start our interaction with Professor Vinod Jairath. Welcome, Professor Jairath, to this interactive session. So, first of all, we would like to know your reflection on your academic journey. You have been by training an aeronautical engineer, and from there you shifted to sociology, and you were not just restricted to academia, you also ventured in documentary filmmaking and also in entrepreneurship. So how you look back and you locate yourself in this entire situation?
Yes, thank you very much for having me here on this capsule. First of all, I think I would like to say that I have always enjoyed whatever I did, right? Starting from aeronautical engineer. That was the time when I thought, it was a passion with me to read about and find out about aircraft and rockets and missiles. And then a time came, it used to be a 5-year program, around the 4th year, suddenly I found that the students around me were quite insensitive to societal issues. They were so indifferent, they were almost contemptuous, that we don't discuss those things, we concentrate on professional issues. And I think that is where I was sort of attracted towards finding out about the society we live in. We don't want to be ignorant citizens. I would also like to state here that during those early days, we grew up in a very secular urban environment, right? And there was no sense of caste, religion, etc. Many people don't believe this, but surprisingly, we were not conscious of this, and that was one. And secondly, the tuition fees and all. At IIT Kanpur, for example, our tuition fee was 12 rupees 50 paise. It was so cheap, which meant that it was accessible to everyone. Right? And look at the situation now. It is so horrifying, that a student has to cough out such large amounts of money to be admitted. So that you found that if there was merit, the student had a chance to, move into good institutions. That was very good. And thirdly, I would like to say that I felt myself to be very fortunate to have experienced these very liberal institutions, IIT Kanpur, Delhi School of Economics, and then at University of Sussex. There was a lot of debate, a lot of discussions, the coffee house was such an important institution. At IIT Kanpur, the all-night canteen, the canteen used to close up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, There used to be intense discussions, more and more cups of tea and coffee, and same thing at Delhi School of Economics. Apart from these discussions, debates, there used to be genuine politics. Students were very concerned, not only about local issues, local university issues, about national issues, about global issues, what was happening in Chile, what is happening in China, Soviet Union. All these things were discussed, right? Hotly debated. I don't think I remember there was any violence between students, but things were debated, discussed very intensely, very committedly, So at Sussex, for example, it was amazing. Students from different parts of the world would come and put up their own little stall and raise those issues, and it was very nice at that time. Things look very different now today.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
True. So, as you said that, you were, growing up and you were studying, your shift to sociology was mediated by certain global events, major global events. That was Cold War at its peak with civil disobedience, civil rights movement in America and 1968 France and all this thing. So, do you think that, these global events do have a big mark on a sociological, journey of a sociologist?
Yes, of course. I think a sociologist needs to be very broad-minded, very open-minded. It's, I think it's essential. And the issues, for example, if you look at development question, at Sussex we had Andre Gunder Frank visiting our Institute of Development Studies, and so you understand his ideas, when one of our students, he asked a question, and Andre Gunder Frank immediately said, "Friend, you seem to belong to a communist party." So he had this notion that the orthodox communists saw first stage transition from feudalism to capitalism, and then second stage transition from capitalism to socialism. Right? So they would talk about two-stage revolution. And he would say, no. Now capitalism is not progressive, right? Capitalism enslaves, right? And that is why the idea of underdevelopment, that the development in the center simultaneously causes underdevelopment in the periphery. So periphery can't be striving to become capitalist, because it will always be in that relationship of center and periphery. Right? So he used to talk about one stage shift, from pre-cap. Of course, he thought that there was nothing like traditional society today. Everything was colored with capitalism. Right? So that it was necessary to shift straight to socialism.
Right.
And to some extent, we found that the Soviet China, call it clash, if you like, or that discordance, in their relationship, part of it very strongly was this. So that is why the students of those times were very disenchanted with Soviet Union, and they were quite attracted to Maoist ideas. Cultural revolution affected, that energy of the youth, that you can do this. So definitely, I think what you study in sociology and what you see globally happening,
Right.
what was happening in Chile, Allende's regime, Pinochet's regime, it was very important. I mean, for example, in today's world, you have to understand what's going on in Gaza. If you don't understand, or you are not interested or inclined to understand, then I think you can't be doing good sociology.
Right.
Yeah. So, Professor Jairath, you have taught at University of Delhi School of Economics, IIT Kanpur, University of Hyderabad, and you have also worked as a development consultant. So, what is the difference between teaching sociology and doing or working as a development consultant? Do you find any difference? Because in sociology, as a discipline, we talk about criticality, right? Everything you have to look at from a critical lens, right? But as a development consultant, the practical concerns are more important sometimes than criticality. So, what do you think about
Yes,
this whole issue?
Definitely, I think there is a certain kind of satisfaction at seeing the conditions at the ground level change. If you make an effort, or maybe you train some youngsters who have the energy, or through them, if you can change the conditions at the ground level, it would certainly be satisfying. I think even a small thing like you can make a school run very efficiently, would give you a lot of satisfaction. If children can run around, have a playground, if there is improvement in teaching methods, it would be very satisfying to see that happen. That is one aspect. Of course, in consultancy, money is also something that destroys a lot of fun, because people start doing things just to have large budgets and so on. That's different. But whereas, like you said, the critical questions you ask in sociology classes, in sociology research, unconstrained by these things. So both have importance, I think. To be able to do something on the ground, make a difference, can be very, very important and very satisfying. But at the same time, you will see that the kinds of major issues that are raised in development theories, in looking at global situations, in looking at conflicts, those that consultant's vision is more narrow. That's what I think.
So, you have been teaching courses on development, right? So, do you think that the global context, the Western context of development and Indian issues of development, is there any difference, or there are overlaps, or what way you imagine the developmental issues in different contexts, two different contexts?
You see, because for my PhD, DPhil, not DLit, we had students from Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Sri Lanka, and then India. Our supervisor, the project director, Professor Scarlett Epstein, she had formulated the thesis our hypothesis that population growth increases income inequalities. And it's very interesting that World Bank funded that project very comfortably. Otherwise, it can be very hard to find money. But some of us followed that trajectory. But there were some of us who didn't, who could not. It did not make sense that population growth causes income inequalities. So some of us rejected that, questioned that, within the project. We had a very brilliant student with us, Newton Gunasinghe from Sri Lanka. Very bright, very committed, and sort of mainstream left perspective. So I had a lot to learn, I think, through interacting with these various students, different experiences. One of our co-students was from Nigeria, and he said, we are a very egalitarian society, we are very equal. And then in the course of talking, he said, our slaves do this something. So we said, hold on, are there slaves? He said, yes. And he said, you are an egalitarian society? He says, yes.
Oh my.
He could not, because he belonged to that lineage, the royal lineage. So it came naturally to him that, yes, we have slaves. That is, it happens. So you see this, Sri Lankans had very sharp focus on these issues of inequalities, and also being a small country, very good perspective. And so we learned a lot. And at that time, when I was doing in sociology departments, they were not really properly teaching agrarian studies, right? I think we only had Professor Bete's caste, class and power, but I started looking at the mode of production debate, and the entire perspective, in Economic and Political Weekly, looked at that, and that changed, and that brings those larger theoretical issues, and also connecting up with issues of development and underdevelopment, the connectivity between the two, and the world economic system, you begin to connect these things, that it is one large system and every little corner is plugged into it, and what kind of function it performs.
Definitely.
So it's very important to have that perspective. If you don't have that larger perspective, I think it's very difficult to do sociology of development.
Right. So, with respect to your one more question with respect to your research. So, as you have said that the population and inequality debate, which was very much relevant when you were doing your PhD, I can see similar type of debate coming, again in our contemporary times, when we see that, that there is a narrative that India is being underdeveloped because of the population issues, specific to certain communities and all these things. So, do you think that the same thing which you were dealing in your student days at 3-4 decades back has come back again in a new formulation?
Right.
Or you see a continuity of this development discourse from 1970s to 2010s and 20s?
Yeah.
Same thing.
There are these stereotypes, or
Right.
sometimes we say that certain narratives are being floated around the social media or in the society, and things about certain communities is, oh, this community is dirty, this community does not want to be educated, this community simply breeds
Right.
like pigs. These are not based on facts. These are just constructions used for political gain, right? And social media becomes very important now. At that time, you didn't have that kind of power. But now you can generate something, an idea, and then it can spread. It can spread everywhere. And when it spreads, it can have both positive and negative influence in a very strong way. We can see these narratives, for example, in Gaza, these days. So it is not, if you check on these facts, then you know these are all wrong.
Right.
But these are constructed to generate certain feelings. It means some hostility towards any group or community. In that you can do that. So it is not that it is always prevalent. It is not necessary. It should be continuous. But it is something that will be generated from time to time, heightened, when the time comes. So these are little toys available in a box, and whenever required, you pick up one and make use of it.
So you have been associated or you have been engaging with some point in your career with science, technology, and society studies. So do you think that your background in engineering and combining it with sociology, social anthropology puts you at an advantage to understand these issues in a much rigorous ways, in a better ways than somebody from not from the science background and combining it with sociology background?
Yes, I can see that issue. That's a very important issue, that if you have to engage with something like sociology of science and technology, does it require you to understand science, technology? I remember one of my friends and colleague, Professor Srikant Kulkarni. He was at IIT Kanpur, finishing his PhD when I started teaching there. He was a philosophy student, and he used to attend classes in quantum physics, in pure mathematics. He was doing that because he said, I must understand if I'm dealing with these questions in philosophy of science. So with this you can see that you do need, it makes sense to be able to understand science and technology. I will tell you another case. I was at CCMB, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology at Hyderabad, and I was interviewing a group leader. He was, I think, looking after the electron microscope there, and I wanted to discuss it, and he said, well, how can I explain it to you? It's so difficult to explain it to a sociologist. So I said, my background is aeronautical engineering. Does that help? He said, oh, okay. Okay, now we can talk, right?
Right.
Now you can imagine how he would have treated somebody who was not a scientist.
True.
So there is generally a certain kind of contempt, that you people don't understand these
Science.
things, forget it. So there is that problem. Yes. But then there was somebody like Shiv Vishwanathan, who was a sociologist, social scientist. He did his PhD in sociology of science and technology, and very long interviews he had. So he was able to do that, right? Later on, I think in science studies, or social studies of science, people are saying anthropological perspectives, on science, with the advent of what were called laboratory studies, that you could study a
Yes.
laboratory like an anthropologist.
A field.
Yes. So it implied that even when you don't know, like you go into a tribal society and you don't know anything about the tribal society.
Right.
So you say you go and slowly immerse yourself and learn. So similarly, they said, why can't you do that in a scientific laboratory? So, but I think I felt with one or two of my students that they found some constraints because of lack of science and engineering background, some constraint. But I think it should be possible. It should be possible to do it.
With respect to this course on science, technology, and society, now what we have observed is that this course is generally not offered in most of the universities where sociology is taught. I can recall only few departments where this course is taught as an elective or as a core course. So, what you think, is this the reason that the unpopularity, because of certain type of, again, stereotypes that that only a person from a science background can understand or can make some,
Yeah.
can do such type of course? Is that the only issue, or there is something else?
You see, earlier on what was seen as Mertonian structural functional approach to science.
Right.
So their first principle was that the content of science is not under sociologist's lens. It cannot be,
Right.
because content of science is not amenable to sociological analysis. It is fixed,
Okay.
right? So you look at scientific communities, you look at award system, invisible colleges, how they influence publications, and so on. And what are the norms, who are included, who are excluded. You could do that kind of analysis without getting into the content of science. But when all that was going on in India, I think no one was doing any sociology of science. The second thing is there is this very strong division between science and others.
Society. Yeah.
So,
Humanities and social sciences.
like social scientists are very scared of mathematics. Somehow, this thing has been created. So I think that is one reason that they would say, no, I don't want to touch science. And finally, after Thomas Kuhn's structure of scientific revolutions, when he said that it is paradigm governed, what is the paradigm, how the paradigm shift, what are the concepts, when you begin to go into those things,
Right.
then you need to be a little more prepared with knowledge of science, or ready to learn, about science and technology and those issues. I think that in India again becomes a little difficult, And I think, yes, you are right. Even today, the situation doesn't look too good.
Right.
Students are not opting for sociology of science. I think laboratory studies, that I think never entrenched itself here in India. And secondly, I think there was also this other stream, the Ashish Nandi, T.N. Madan, Shiv Vishwanathan,
Right.
Who were talking about
Indianization.
anti-modernity, anti-science, critiques of modernity and science, modern science. So I was reviewing that edited volume by Ashish Nandi, and I found that they don't go into the science laboratories, they don't go into the scientific institutions. They are looking at science elsewhere in society. So I think that is also unfair. You can't really do justice if you don't look at hardcore science in a physics laboratory or, I remember Professor J.P.S. Oberoi, who was a critic of modern science, coming to IIT Kanpur, and he was so fascinated with the laser lab, with, all that technology. He was so fascinated. He himself was engineer, So I think that needs to be done. You can't do this because it has actually very important links with the when you say critique of modernity, then it sometimes goes towards support of tradition.
Kind of neo-traditionalism. also.
Nativism.
Yes. Then you are uncritical
Right.
towards tradition. You are ready to be critical towards modernity, which is okay, which is fine. But you should also be equally critical about the tradition.
Right. Glorification
That's true.
cannot go at expense of criticism.
Right.
So yes, you also introduced a course on Muslim communities in India at the University of Hyderabad, which is first of its kind in India. So what were the motivations behind introducing this course? Can you
Yes.
tell us a brief
Yes,
about
it's,
this?
Actually, it's very nice to talk about it because
Yeah.
I think even Jamia Millia didn't have a course. And I think even JNU could not have this course. So I was very fortunate to be at University of Hyderabad, where colleagues from different departments supported so that the course could be taught. I remember there were some colleagues who said, but why don't you teach Hinduism also? So why don't you give a general course on sociology of religion? So I said, no, this is not about religion. This is not about Hindu and Islam. This is not Hinduism and Islam. This is about Muslims as they are. And that is why Muslim communities in plural. The whole emphasis was to talk about diversity, to deconstruct that monolithic image of Muslims, and a negative image. So I wanted, because there was that kind of mood in the country and also globally, those ideas are floating. So I wanted to generate a debate around this among students, to be openly able to see that Muslims are like any other community. The way Muslims are diverse, it's just like the way Hindus are diverse, Christians are diverse, Sikhs are diverse, right? There are inequalities, they do different things, their ideas are different, right? In every community there are atheists, we call them this or that, but there is atheism, there are those who are very much committed. So there is a great variety, and the way everyone, and you ask certain Muslims, I remember in Indonesia I was asking, what does it mean to be a good Muslim? He said, to be a good human being. That's one way of looking at it. So the idea was to generate a debate, and I encourage students to ask questions, to talk to each other, openly, freely. And I think, I don't know, but I got the impression that students liked it. Students enjoyed it. In fact, I got the feedback. I was told that even they go back to the hostels and in the mess, there is this discussion going on, not that course, but the issues that are generated by the course. So I remember American students saying, oh, thank you so much, my ideas are completely changed, So I think to think openly, that is all. To think openly, question the images that are constructed, which become the basis of hate, those should be demolished.
So you also edited a volume called Frontiers and Boundaries Embedded Muslim Communities in India. Could you tell us the journey of this volume and
Yes.
how you sort of started imagining this volume and how it took shape and subsequently
Yeah.
got published? Yeah.
Yeah, we did a seminar on this because of this idea only that first it is frontiers. So I thought frontiers is not sharp edges. Frontiers are open, diffused, right? So that was one image that that Muslims and others, there are no sharp boundaries. The second aspect of this was the embedded Muslim community. That Muslims are not living on their own. They are embedded in a larger society.
Yes.
I mean, you will have Kerala Muslims, Malayali speaking Kerala Muslims, Telugu speaking Andhra Muslims, Bengali speaking Bengali Muslims. Like, so there are Maharashtrian and Gujarati Muslims. They also have sects among themselves. So they are embedded in a larger social system, and they get their culture, their structure, all that is influenced by this embeddedness. So it's important to recognize. They just don't hang in the air by themselves.
That's true.
That must be deconstructed. So for this, I think we went to, it was tough initially to find all the scholars, who have done work in India on different communities, and Professor Imtiaz Ahmad, he was a big help. He had, I had sent him the note, and I think there was something going on at IIT Delhi, something. I was there, and I found he was waiting outside the hall for me with some students, and he had a long chat, and he said, "I'm going to help you," and it was a huge help, to find those scholars, who were doing work on different Muslim communities, and so we had a very successful seminar, and that came together in that volume, which was very nice.
Yeah. So you also edited a special volume of Deccan Studies on Muslim communities in Andhra. So do you think that Andhra tells a different story of Muslim communities, or how do you situate this?
See, Andhra is like a different region, so it's Muslims would be different in that sense, but there will be commonalities. Deccan Studies is a journal which sort of sticks to, that it's committed to
The region.
looking at the region, right? Deccan Studies. So one was that we had some papers on this region, and there is also, generally the focus is more on the elite Muslims in Hyderabad, whereas this Andhra especially, where they have focused on more ordinary Muslims, and they are also different from Telangana Muslims, right? So there are all these differences. I think if these are emphasized, because it was Deccan Studies, therefore, we picked this up. But the idea was still that same, that the Andhra Muslims are embedded in a different region, Telangana Muslims different region, what they speak, right? The Andhra Muslim will speak more Telugu, right? Their dress for going to the masjid is different from those in Telangana, right? So there are all these differences.
Interesting,
which is-
yeah.
Yeah. So lastly, I would like to ask you, and this is a very common question, everywhere, that how we as a sociologist differentiate Islamic studies or studies on Islam as a religion from the studies of Muslim communities in general. So, as you have taught a course and you have been engaged for a decade on, on this issue, if you can please just, give an answer to this.
You see, Islamic studies have made, have defined their own discipline,
Right.
But I feel that they need to wake up a little.
Okay.
You can't just keep citing Quran, for every issue, Like if you are studying Hinduism, let's say, it doesn't make sense if you keep quoting from Gita or, if you say, oh, Gita is our most sacred text, then keep quoting from Gita, that we are very peaceful, we are very, very nice, and we love everyone, we love the whole world,
Right.
All these things don't make any sense. Because you say, what was the context when these texts were produced?
Right.
How the context has changed. It keeps changing. It's not that suddenly it was produced and then we come straight to, 2025. So many changes, and at different points, it is used differently. It's interpreted differently, right? And that should be. And so I think Islamic studies should bring in more sociology, right, into their discipline. They should see how Muslim societies are changing, and I think how religion is viewed within Muslims, how religion is viewed within the Hindu communities, how different Hindus see themselves as Hindu in so many different ways,
Right.
Similarly, Muslims, everyone is like that. So I think it will make a lot of sense to shake out of this, the great texts, to follow them in order to understand the religion. I think religion is on the ground, how people actually practice their religion.
Right.
In Indonesia, I checked into a hotel, and in the evening, I just saw there was a bar, and I was curious, I went there, and these young boys were there, and one of them I asked very innocently, ignorantly, and I asked, "You're a Muslim?" And he says, "Yes." I said, "Do you pray 5 times a day?" He started by a small laugh, and then he was rolling on the ground, laughing. I said, "What happened? What did I ask?" He said, "I work, I have a job.
Right.
What do you mean praying 5 times a day? How can I do that?" So I was surprised at I said, "What is your name?" He said something like Ravi Kant.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said, "Ravi Kant?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Do you know the meaning? Do you know the meaning of Ravi?" He said, "No."
Okay.
And I said, "It means sun." He said, "Okay." So, I mean, then they immediately called a young girl who came to the bar. She was also Muslim. And she came and started dancing and singing that song, Chaiya Chaiya. Huh? Very popular. They said it's very popular in Indonesia. I mean, if you say, "Oh, you are not a Muslim," they say, "No, I'm a Muslim. I'm a good Muslim."
Yes.
I'm a good human being.
Right.
You know, I don't become a Muslim if I pray for 5 times a day. You know, it is not necessary. There are many different ways of being a Muslim. Similarly, there are many different ways of being a Hindu. I think to put on the whatever shlokas
Right.
on a big loudspeaker, you know, to announce that I am a very strong Hindu is ridiculous. You know, I told somebody someday, I said, you just disturbed my evening peace by putting on the loudspeaker. You know, I'm a good Hindu. Why can't I be a good Hindu? You know, but I want peace in the evening when the sun is setting. You know, so I think this is what we should be looking at in Islamic studies, right? That how do people practice their religion?
Right.
You know,
Sure.
and document it anthropologically. You know?
Right. And also how religion is related to other institutions,
Right.
economy,
Right.
media
right.
studies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something, as you have said, with respect to studies on science and society, you quoted Robert Merton saying that as a sociologist we should not be much bothered with the content of
Right.
science.
Right. Right.
I think there is a similar analogy that as a
Right.
sociologist we
Right.
should not be much bothered with the content of these scriptures
Yeah.
rather than how it is practiced and interpreted in different
Right. Right.
time and space.
We can look at the interpretation, you know, of the
Yeah.
ordinary folk on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Different contexts and different histories of the
Correct.
these communities.
That's right. You know.
Right.
So, thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Oh,
It
thank
was
you
nice.
very much. I enjoyed this discussion.
Right, it was nice interacting with you after a long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vishpesh. Thank you, Aditya.
Thank you.